לחיים. It's well known as an old pisgum in the English, and how they call it, a proverb or a pisgum, that not everything that meets the eye is in effect a fact, or not everything that meets the eye is in effect the emet. What does that mean? It's well known that the Stalkers, that the Alter Rebbe was Moitzoi Shabbos, Pasha Shmois, and it was during the fleeing, the flight from Napoleon into the deep snow of the Russian winter, and due to a misunderstanding, the Alter Rebbe's Einikel, he was the son of the Mittler Rebbe, Rabbi Nachum was his name. He sat alongside the Alter Rebbe, and they didn't know where they were going, Klau, because the snow and the storm was just impenetrable. It was difficult to know in Klau what was happening. So the Alter Rebbe used to pause every now and then whenever there was any, like, Parshas Drochim or sort of change in the road, and he would Beruach Koche, the Alter Rebbe would be Megala, what is the right way to take, where they should go, to eventually come to Mokim HaRvocha. So the Mittler Rebbe's son, he would give over the message, because the Alter Rebbe used to speak in a Lashon that they wouldn't understand. So the Alter Rebbe, the Rebbe Nachum, he would give it over to the driver and to the others in the Pamalia, where it's supposed to go. So once they paused at a certain place, and the Alter Rebbe said of what they should do, but the Einikel, Rebbe Nachum, he got it wrong. He didn't quite understand, and he gave a different hoirah than what the Alter Rebbe meant. And so due to that, they wandered off in a side area which wasn't what the Alter Rebbe wanted. After a while, the Alter Rebbe opened his eyes, because he was the whole time, while they were traveling, the Alter Rebbe had his eyes closed. Yeah, but every now and then he would open his eyes to see what was happening, and he saw that they were going, it wasn't what he'd had in mind. So then the Alter Rebbe said in Yiddish, he said that, Oi weh, zu der Seide, wo der Einikel geht nicht in seine Wege. Oi to the Seide, what the grandson doesn't go in his way. That was what the Alter Rebbe said. And meaning that this wasn't good, the matter was not good. Because they'd gone much too far to go back. It wasn't short to go back, both due to the conditions of the snow, and also it wouldn't have held, they were already a long way. So the Alter Rebbe said there's no choice but to wait till they come to some sort of a settlement or a issue, and to see if we can't ask for pity and take us in. So they came to this Goyshe village, which is referred to in a lot of the stories, and also the Rebbe, that Tzemach Tzedek brings it down in Derech Mitzvah Secha, and they asked the Goyim if they would let them in, and maybe they could give a small, village house or dira, for the Alter Rebbe to be in, and that's what happened. The elders of the Goyim were very impressed by also this amazing figure that came in their midst together with the whole Paramalia, and they agreed to give a small house. And so that's where the Alter Rebbe and the Tzemach Tzedek and some of the close family members, that's where they spent Shabbos. They came in on Pachot, I think it was Thursday night, and they spent the whole Shabbos there. And on Moitzoi Shabbos was the Istalkes. But it was about midnight, about Chatzos Laila on Moitzoi Shabbos, and there's a whole dion that's brought down in certain places, a whole shaila as to how did the Alter Rebbe make Havdalah. As wine wasn't shaykh, first of all because they were amongst Goyim, and zweitens, the Alter Rebbe apparently couldn't have drank at that moment, he couldn't have drank wine. So there's two different sort of nuschoyas. One nusach says that he made Havdalah on tea, that he made a cup of tea and he made Havdalah on that. Others said it was on coffee. And some say it was even coffee with, I don't know if it was almond milk, but it was some sort of milk was in it. And the Alter Rebbe made, that's how he made Havdalah. Yeah. And then he had a whole talk with the Tzemach Tzedek. That's one on. I'm soon going to go into that in a bit more detail. And then the Alter Rebbe made the famous remark that those houses, the Goyshe Shtibelot that they used to live in, were sort of built around two like poles from the side and a big korah, how do you call it, a big beam, ceiling beam, like which ran from one pole to the other, and all the rest of the building sort of from both sides leant and leaned on that korah. It was a big board, and that literally held everything together. So you can imagine what the situation was like and how big the whole place really was. It couldn't really have been more than just a few square meters. Anyway, the Alter Rebbe all of a sudden looked up at the korah, this thing that holds the whole thing together, and the Alter Rebbe said to the Tzemach Tzedek who was with him, the Mittler Rebbe wasn't there. The Mittler Rebbe, he'd gone somewhere else. He went, not because he got lost, but he deliberately went to another place, the Mittler Rebbe, and he wasn't there, b'shas Yistalk. It was only the Tzemach Tzedek and the other members of the Farbrengen. The Rebbetzin was there. So the Alter Rebbe said to the Tzemach Tzedek, he said to him, Zester, do you see? So the Tzemach Tzedek said he didn't know what was the kavanah. So he said, he's sorry, but he doesn't see. He doesn't see anything. So the Alter Rebbe said, cook after the beam, after koira, and tell me what you see. So the Tzemach Tzedek looked at the beam, and rather ashamedly, he said to the Alter Rebbe, I see only the beam, I see the beam. So the Alter Rebbe says, the beam? The Alter Rebbe said, ich seh nicht kein beam. Ich seh nur the koach Eloki, was is mahavahim jeder Regel. Ich seh nur the koach Eloki, which is mahavahim b'kol regel v'regel. He said, he's terribly sorry, but he doesn't see it. So the Alter Rebbe said again, Ezet the koach Eloki. And that's what's written in Shara Yichud, in Perek Gimel, Ilo nitno reshus lo ayin. If it would be given permission to the eye. Now what does that mean? That means if we've got an eye, and our eyes see, but there's certain things that if we had permission, we'd see differently. We wouldn't see that way. So the question is, how do you get that permission? But if we're given permission to the eye, then we wouldn't see, we'd see only this koach Eloki. And so in other words, that you wouldn't see it, that's what he writes in Shara Yichud, lo yihoyinu roim es gashmis v'chumriyas, hanivra, ela ha-koach Eloki, amachayo yisay b'chol rega bilvat. And then the Alter Rebbe writes another level in that Gufa, that's already shot to the longest over there in Perek Gimel. From that we see that the Alter Rebbe saw another Indian altogether. And there's a very similar story I heard from the Rav from Bnei Brak, but it's written now in certain places. I think it's even brought down in Teves Sholem. But not at the end, in one of the other sikhs, it's brought down that the Rebbe Hashem once sat with people, also at a masiba, whether it was a Farbrengen or a Sudas Mila or something like that, and there was fish on the table, in the middle of the table, like pieces of fish. So all of a sudden the Rebbe Rashab said, they cooked up the fish. Everybody should look at the fish. So everybody looked at the fish, and the Rebbe said, no, Zetidach, you could see after all. So they said, so the Rebbe Rashab said that if I would want at this moment, I can show you the Koach Eloki. Only that, and not the fish. But he said, I'm a little concerned that maybe after all you will chap the Gashmias. That's what he said. I'm worried that after all you'll still chap the Gashmias. It's better we leave it for the moment. That's what I heard from Rolando, that Rebbe. He wanted to show the people, the Koach Eloki, not the fish. But he decided that it was better to leave it for the moment. As he came, that there's ilu nidna reshus lo ayin. There's the ayin the way it is, and then there's a way there could be a reshus. Had it got a permission, literally, given to the ayin, and then you'll see something incomparably different. So Heinemas, it's put down in Sforim that most people, but for sure great people, doesn't for sure, that before they leave the world, they all of a sudden wake up to and they see and they experience things on a different plane, a different level of the earth brought down. So some people want to say that that's, some people want to say that that's what happened with the Alter Rebbe, since it was a few counted hours before the Stalkers. So he was also gifted with that reshus in Hashemayim. But Chitzat Kosher Lilmaid came. Yesh Leima, that's the way the Alter Rebbe became. That's the way he saw things. And there's an old saying, you only write what you hold by. How's it written? Ano nafshoi Yehovish Kesovias. That Anoichi by Matan Torah is a noitrikon. Ano nafshoi Kesovias Yehovish. That the Eibusher writes his own etzim when he writes. So when he wrote the Torah, that's the etzim of the Eibusher. So by tzaddikim, it's also the same thing. That's what he writes in Shara Yichud. Ilu nitna reshus lo ayin. That's where he holds with. That's the sign in. Yeah. We see that there are like two levels in, and even at that point, Bilti Sofik, that later on, once he became a Nasi and in his, what you might call, more developed years, that someone tzedek also saw it. But at that time, that he wasn't, he was still Kaviochel young, a Rebbe is never young, but he was sort of young in years, as he wasn't zeicher to that madrega. It's basically so many very great people like Nasiim. However, we see that there's like two what you might call dimensions, or two. It's what you might call a reality, and then a higher reality, a different reality altogether. So now, at that same time, it's really a pillar to gazak. If you ever looked in Derech Mitzvah Secha, in the Sefer Derech Mitzvah Secha, at the end of the mitzvah Lo Yisivaru Eish, B'chol Moishvei Secha, B'yom HaShabbat, Lo Yisivaru Eish. At the end of that minor, the Tzemach Tzedek writes an amazing thing. And he says that when I was in the Kfar, Pianya, whatever its name was, with my Zayda, the Gaon, Nishmat Yedin, he calls the Rebbe also, the Alter Rebbe, great names and everything. He says that I was with him, and he said I asked him a question. And he said he answered me, he gave me an answer. And he said, Lo harbe zman, mi'at zman li'achar kain, he was mistalig min ha'olam. So it's in those last, and he writes it somewhat to the go. So what was the question? So the Talmud Tzedek said to the Alter Rebbe that it's written that on Shabbos, the Achila of Shabbos is a very high madrega. It's what's called Milmaila Lamata, and it's called the Inyan of an Achilas Kohan. It's like the way the Kohanim ate from the Korbanos, Bizman Shamikdash Hayakaya. That's the Inyan of an Achilas Shabbos. And it's brought down that the whole Inyan of the Ma'acholim, they are from Klippas Nega. They are Yoinik with Klippas Nega. On Shabbos, they're not Yoinik with Klippas Nega. They're not Yoinik with Klippas Nega. They're Yoinik only with Tzaddik Kedusha. Therefore, the Rabbi Marash writes in a Maimah that even if a person eats Teves Nafshe on Shabbos, it won't damage him like it would in the middle of the week. Farbrengen, because the Etzem Meichel is Mushuchra from Klippas Nega. It's only you're not allowed to let the leash run too loose. You know? That's the famous story what the Baal Shem Tov revealed. There was this fellow that he was all dressed up in all the big day shows, and he had a strime on his everything, but he looked like he turned into a cow. He looked like a behemoth because he was eating the meat, too much time. In other words, ain't no hanami, you don't have to be so careful, or you can't just overdo it. But anyway, that's all by the way. Well, it's not by the way. But anyway, whatever. So the Talmud Tzedek said, I don't understand. He said that people get the table ready before you come home from shul. So all the food on Friday is already put on the table. It's already been cooked. It's already been baked and everything. Yeah. It's the same food. It's the same food that was there maybe even Thursday night. They baked the challahs, or they cooked the meat, or they did this or did that. It's already there. The same food. And now you come home from shul. It's like Kiddush with all the good Sachen. How come you say there's no more Klippas Nega? What happened? It's the same food. Maybe if somebody came and made a magic wand or something. Nothing seems to happen. It seems to be the same food. Yet you say, no, now Shabbos, Mashu, Acher HaGamri. So the Alter Rebbe said that the answer is like this. He said, Ein Hanami, he says it's the same food. But, he says, written in the Zohar that on Erev Shabbos, there goes out a pulsa de noira, a pillar of fire. Goes out on Erev Shabbos. There's so many minutes or time before Shabbos comes in. Goes on this pulsa de noira, and it burns up the food. What does it burn? It burns away all the Klippas Nega. The whole Klippas Nega gets burnt away. And so by the time you come along, this pulsa de noira has done its job. And so he answered the Alter Rebbe that that's why you have to take a shower or bath or whatever on Erev Shabbos, b'mayim chamim. It has to be mayim chamim. He writes there in the Maimah. Because in that mayim that you take a bath on Erev Shabbos, or you go to the mikveh, or Leizel Torah Adora, is this pulsa de noira comes down and links with the heat in the mayim, and it makes you get rid of Klippas Nega. As I say that, Shugufay Shal Yehudi Eino Oiseh Haguf. It's not the same group. Everything was to be the same. Oh no, it's not. The pulsa de noira. Therefore, they say about the Chasam Sofer. Wasn't from the Mars. They say about the Chasam Sofer that he used to pour hot water over himself Erev Shabbos, and they say it was inhumanly hot. And if it wasn't inhumanly hot, he would say, you have to heat it more. The guy said, this is inhuman, And he used to stand and pour this water over himself. So they once asked the Chasam Sofer, how come you don't get all, you should be just a little sort of burnt piece of flesh, you put this hot water on it, So he said, no, I have to have the pulse of the Neura. He said, I've got to link up with the pulse of the Neura. So he said, if I have really hot, then it will attract the pulse of the Neura. Kach הוא אמר, זה אתה כזאת. So there's an Indian, that's why, there's an old joke in Lubavitch about the Polish mikvahs. Have you ever been into a mikvah in Mea Shorim on a weekday, an ordinary Wednesday? You ever been into a mikvah in Mea Shorim? You can't go in. Well, I mean, I guess you have to, but it's really hard going. It's hot, brilliantly cold. They really go for it. So on Erev Shabbos, it's twice the heat. Yeah. And so everybody thinks it's just a joke. It's not. Yesh b'zeh inyan zeh. But once again, we see here an amazing fact. Oh, so the Alter Rebbe said, that's what the Tzemach said. Don't see any difference, Lorim, it should look different, but because there's pulse of the Neura. So the Alter Rebbe said that mitzad, the Helen Vahester of the Guf, and Befrat, the Nefesh Yabaham is Lorim. Or he said, Ilo, somebody's Zache Haruz, how do you call it, purification of the eyes, of the seeing, he can see it. You can see how the whole change occurs. Come to us that once again we see this amazing, situation where there's a reality where everybody looks and sees a piece of food. Come over from shul, it's the same piece of food. But the emissary reality is, the emissary reality is there's an amazing change has occurred. And there's gone out a pulse of the Neura and a Shemayim, and it's burnt everything up. And it's burnt away the whole Klippus Neger. It's only on Motzei Shabbos. Some people say after the Malav Malki. But if he say you have to be careful to eat a Malav Malki, not at 2 o'clock in the morning, if not Boika or something, you should eat a Malav Malki fairly soon, up to a Shlish Laila or something, 2 or 3 hours or something. I've forgotten exactly the shiur, but that's the proper time to eat a Malav Malki. Therefore they say the Rebbe used to wash. On Motzei Shabbos, he didn't know Shabbos, he never ate anything. Shabbos itself, the Rebbe never ate anything, come on, as you do it. But on Motzei Shabbos, he washed, and because that was super to do it Malcha Mashiach. So the Rebbe's not going to let that they said the Rebbe used to make Havdalah, then he used to fold up the talis, and then he used to sit down and have to wash his hands and And you know what he used to listen to? He used to listen to on the radio while he was eating Malav Malki. He used to listen to how Yosef Weinberg, whoever it was, they used to chazer over the sichas on the radio. They used to chazer the sichas from Shabbos. Yeah, so the Rebbe would listen in to see how the chazer was. Yeah, it's very interesting. Once again, this amazing Indian of things happening, but we don't really see them. But ilu nitna reshus la'ayin, then you would see them. And the Alter Rebbe said with the pastors, that's what he see. With that, I want to try and move over to another very important theme, and that's what the Rebbe says, you have to open your eyes. The Rebbe says that everything is ready. Yeah, you got to open your eyes. What's the touch? Yeah, you got to open your eyes. Or that at least would imply that there is what to see. There's something beyond what we're experiencing, that really is what you might call the genuine situation. That's the real situation. So, Moshe, I want to tell you guys like this. Yeah, if you look at the world the way it is right now, I don't really have much time or opportunity. I'm living up there on the hill, and I look out my window, I see fogs most of the time, so I don't really have much chance to observe the world. But the bit I do here is very marshcherative, very depressing. Yeah, you hear what's going on, all sorts of terrible things, and it just seems to be confusing and leading into further confusion and further depths of bilbul, b'kolei hamataya. Lo stam bilbul, al bilbul hamataya. So to Rabbi, I'm sorry, you guys, you got the wrong trouble. You got the wrong picture. You haven't got the wrong picture. It just depends, what are you doing with your observation? Are you observing the way you observe the food on Erev Shabbos? You don't really see anything happen. Or are you supposed to really be opening your eyes, in other words, improving your seeing, and bettering your seeing, and looking deeper and more meaningful, and then you see something different, another realm altogether, a reality, complete. And therefore, that's an amazing thing. I'll just give you a dogma of what I mean. The other night, I forget where it was. I don't know, maybe it was in the yeshiva to me with Dorcas. I move around quite a bit from my age, so I don't, but I move, in just a small circle. I don't move, all over the place. But I sort of move around. There's a guy who told me an amazing story that he said that some of the shluchim in Russia, and he even mentioned the name of one of the shluchim, that he was in his office one morning, and then I see one of the archbishops walks into his office. An archbishop walks into his office, and he said, "Good morning, sir." He said, "Good morning to you. My boy is Chocha. What do you want here? What are you after?" So the bishop said to him, he said, "Listen here, man." He said, "I would like to come on the Day of Atonement to a synagogue. I want to see what goes on, So, the first thing was, this guy's a bit suspicious, He said, "What do you mean you want to see?" He said, "No, I don't mean I want to see in order to cause you guys trouble. I just want to know better how to get at you. That's not what I mean." He said, "I would really like to see what happened." So the guy said to him, "Okay, our shul is always open to anybody, but you have to take off your Ishmael and Begodim, you know what I mean? You have to take off all your paraphernalia, you know what I mean, all the mises, and all the crutch matches and all the mises. You have to take all that off." And he said, "You take all that off and you come, dressed up like a so-called ordinary man, then no trouble, You can come in." So the kid said, this guy shows up on Yom Kippur. This is just not long ago, maybe last Yom Kippur. And the kid, he sits the whole time and he looks and he doesn't want to go home, and he seems to be quite comfortable, He's watching and he's listening. So a kid said, without the whole arichas, what came out later was that this guy heard somewhere that he had in his family yeah. As the old saying have it, deep in Madagascar, deep in the Iglo Haki Tsofoini, if the Eskimos or something, then you're going to find a yid. You're going to find a little yid. Okay. See, you guys are not into jokes. Maybe the problem is you think I'm too serious. But anyway, all of a sudden this guy says that he's got Yidden in the family. So the shliach says, joked out. He said, "You got Yidden in the family?" He said, "Yeah." And he said, "Something tells me that I'd really like to know what's this all about. I want to really know what's happening." So he said, "Would I be able to come another couple of times without my paraphernalia?" He said, "I'll come just the way, dressed up normally." He said, "Okay, if I come." He said, "Sure. A shul is open to anybody, So he did it a couple more times, and a few weeks after that, he shows up in his office, and he says, "Listen, I've decided I'm going to stop my career." In other words, he's going to leave the whole paraphernalia. And he said, "I'd like to become a Yid. I want to become a Jew. I need your guidance. You have to show me how to do it." And so it went through a certain amount of time, and they say that just a few days ago, a few weeks ago, the guy became a Yid. It could be it was only a Geras Misov. Me or that. They don't quite know how the whole family tree gets together. Whether it's on the female side or on the male side, or how it all works, lo yodim. So I ask you, what did you do it? You know, the Shmeina Begodim, the whole, you know, the Havdil, the whole 8 clothes, and the ganze bit, and he's an archbishop, not stomach, you know, a little sort of kleiner nobody around the place, you know, an archbishop, yeah, and he shows up, and next thing is, yeah. So, I mean, things are happening. And what I want to suggest to you, that if you go up onto a plane, now let's say you're going somewhere, get up on the plane, sit down, turn to whoever's around you, and just start talking. I'll soon get onto that why. Why is the idea to start talking? And the next thing is you'll find somebody who says, oh yeah, you're just the man I needed to meet. I got a few questions, and I got this, and I got that. And you find that people are asking meaningful questions.
Yeah.
They're not just dumb. They're not just that they want to know, you know, which football game's coming off, or you know, who's in the baseball league or something. That's not what bothers them. Maybe 12 years ago, that's what bothers them. But nowadays, that's not what bothers them. I mean, what bothers them is, and this happened to me, the last time I went to the river was just before I came here to Teves. I went to visit all the Talmidim and everybody, and just, you know, sort of warm myself up at the river before I came up to Teves. I get up on the plane when I'm coming back, and there was a guy, I'm sitting here, and a guy sitting over there, and he's got a computer, and he's watching some sort of film, you know, on the computer. So I thought, well, that's a perfectly normal thing, person. I don't, so I sit down, he sees me, and he starts to look like that, he closes the computer, and he says, oh, you're some sort of religious man? That's what he says to me. Yeah, that's what I'm. So I said, well, you know, I try to be, you know, he said, maybe you're a rabbi or something. And I said, well, maybe, yeah, that's a good word, you know, maybe. He said, yeah, but he said, you don't maybe too much. He said, I think you can probably answer some of my questions. So the questions, who mentioned them? You know, for questions. Next hour and a half, I had no rest, I had no garnish. He's peppering me with all these questions. About, you know, how do you know that God is, and how do you know, and what do you say about this, and why this? When I got onto the plane, the guy was looking at a film. But that wasn't really his real question. I mean, it just, you know, it had nothing to do with looking at a film. He saw me, you know, close the computer, like a machine gun. And the guy was really into something. He was not just stoned. He was a goy, not even a yid that, not even a goy that's got some yidden in his mishpach or something. Yeah. And kach hazeh b'kol ha'inyanim. You go out into the street and you can see somebody running and jogging, let's say. Yeah. So he looks to be, you know, how to call a push-to jogger, you know. Stop him. You say, listen, you know, what's really bothering you? You know, what's going on with you? Yeah, you'll be amazed what you might hear. And not only you might hear, it's korel uvadai that you'll hear. V'ad kedikar, even people that look to be really busy with the push of the things, like taxi drivers or whoever, it all depends how you talk to them. If you come from the right angle, then they start asking you questions. They start saying what's bothering them. Because everybody who yesh moya b'kod kodesh, בזמן הזה חושב על משהו. ומשהו שהוא חותר באיזה עניין. And it doesn't matter who it is. It's a pillar nifla. That's what the Rabbi means, that there are two levels of vision. When you hear the radio, they are interested in keeping you in a certain realm of vision. And they are unbelievable mumchim at it. The way the radio does it is an unbelievable mumchas. And therefore you must not listen to radio. What are we supposed to do? I don't know, but if you listen to a radio, hear what it says, and truck for care. You know, like on Misnagi. You know the old joke about the siddur. If you really want to know what to do, you ask a Misnagi and they do the opposite. They do exactly what is. I heard one from Rabbi Mendel. Rabbi Mendel said it's a Torah Makubo. He said, if you don't have anybody to ask, you don't know what to do. If you have to meet up with a Misnagid, ask him and then do the other. I heard it from a minute. Yeah. So what do we see? That there's two dimensions. We're living in two amazing realities. That on the one hand, the world, bilti sofi, is shoef liyatir sarakus. לא יהיה איסי כל העולם כולו, אלא לדעת בוירם בלבד. עד כאן לשון הרמב"ם. But לפי זה, if we learn that way, then we're already holding in Yemais HaMashiach. And that sikha that we learned tonight, the Rebbe says right at the end of the sikha, that after the Istalchus of the Friedrich Rebbe, and they began the Hafotas HaMayonis B'chol Ha'olam Kuloi, what does that mean? It means him. Yeah, Hishchilu Yemais HaMashiach. It's written clearly, the Rebbe says it in the Sikha. Hishchilu Yemais HaMashiach. And the preparation for that was the work of the Friedrich Rebbe in America. But once, after the Istalchus, we Hishchilu, ja, Hafotas HaMayonis B'chol Ha'olam Kuloi, das ist schon eine andere Gede. Das ist Yemais HaMashiach. Yemais HaMashiach, now you listen to the radio, I spoke to a person the other day and said, could you tell me what's the latest news, what they're saying? And he says, no. So I said, why not? He said, I don't listen to the radio anymore. I said, why not? He said, it just makes you crazy, just depresses you. So he said, he doesn't listen anymore. Because that's a special mumchas that mankind has taught himself to mislead other mankinds. The whole union of the press and the whole union of publicity in the whole world, Kuli, is a huge organization of molding you the way they want you to be.
Liars.
Yeah, and now it's coming to real, the Hebrew from Vo'ero. Vo'ero, this is how it should be. Read Be'elakus L'Kol Yid, to every person. What they do is they make you see Petyucha for. And that's why it is that the Rebbe said, Shalom Mendel Mato Sekar, that's the union of the Rebbe, that you've got to open your eyes. Because whether you want it or not, you are under the influence of those who massively, measure decades, have learned very swiftly and very amazingly how to close your eyes. How to bring a film over your eyes. And so, therefore, we live in this film over our eyes. And we all experience things, but we experience things the way we're manipulated to experience them, not the way we should really experience them. Yeah, and that's what the Rebbe said, you have to open your eyes. And if you won't be manipulated by that kisur, al ha'inayim, then you'll see completely different. You'll see that the world is running towards a whole new v'yadata hayim k'mayim l'yom mechasem. It's moving with a tremendous swiftness and a tremendous urgency towards something much better. And I could bring you tens of examples of what I've heard from certain people, what people have asked them, and what certain people that they would never have dreamt that they would asked a question. Yeah, and it's just happening all over, throughout the world. That people are, and those who are not, they say, they've got to just put them out of the picture altogether. Those who are not asking the questions, and those who are after blood spilling and all this type of stuff, with them, there's no other answer only to get rid of them. Because they are the emissary Nochash HaKadmon. They're the emissary serpent. The emissary Nochash HaKadmon. So with them, ein malasa. Of so-called, in inverted commas, ordinary people, I don't know if there's any such thing, but so-called ordinary people are completely different. It's another world altogether, and it's plummeting towards something incomparably higher, and the Rabbi said that's Mashiach. And the Rabbi said that Yemoisa Mashiach already began from the moment that he started spreading Yiddishkeit throughout the whole world. As I state in the Sikh of Pasuk Kakatu, Yemoisa Mashiach. They say to you think you're in Yemoisa Mashiach, you don't really, why we know the heck where we are. But why we don't know where we are, because we live in a world of this crazy media and all this unbelievable plot against the human race. We live inside that plot. And everyone, oh yes, and yet the real truth is something else. The real, and that's what the Alter Rebbe said. You don't see it, but it's happening. Yeah, it's happening. Then you would see it. Yeah, you would see it. Bilti Sofi. That's the end of an opening in our eyes. We've got to look beyond the borders of the whole plot that has been planned against us, and we've got to see what is really happening, and besimcha v'tuv levo, yet to be makar of people and to urge them and to help them, yet go ahead with their improving of the human race. And it's happening all over. It's happening all over. And the weird thing is that look at what happened in France. Look at what happened in Tzarfat. Yeah, the Rebbe said that the whole Tzarfat, it was nepach to another Matthias altogether. But yeah, what is happening? These Amalekites, they've got to be got rid of. They're making all the Torahs. But everybody thinks about Tzarfat, all these terrible things, because it's all sort of the picture that comes out of it. The real picture is something else. Mashu acher, lagam. All it needs is a confident leader to just do with the Amalekites what needs to be done with them, and then to help everybody move in a much better direction. But nobody wants to take that step. Why? Because they're all thinking about the oil and the money and all the Torah. Once again, like the Rebbe Rashab said, the cup is in Galoshen. The head's inside, how to say Galoshen?
Galoshen's boots.
Robert's
boots.
Yeah, underlying. Modern Hebrew. Yeah. It's inside Galoshen. The head is down inside the Galoshen. And just look at ourselves, look at your own self, and you'll see that a lot of your head is in the Galoshen. Yeah. You got to take your head out of the Galoshen. And if you do, Be'ez Hashem, we'll start seeing a much better world. But people say, good, he's an idealist, he's already getting a bit old, he's already talking through his head. Hey, no phenomenon. But I'm right. I believe that I believe, because I'm not saying it. If it was my idea, then it's the Rebbe's idea. And that's the Rebbe. That's open your eyes and see something different. See that the whole world is moving towards the Rebbe. You know the story that happened once, and the Rebbe comments about it, and the whole Sikha, that once the Rebbe Rashab was eating a meal, and people were there, and the Rebbe Rashab picked up a piece of chicken on his fork, and he wanted to put it in his mouth. You know what often happens? Before you get it to the mouth, it fell down back onto the plate. So the Rebbe Rashab smiled, and he said, "Oh, a simon as er will not nicht." That's a sign that he doesn't want yet. So everybody wasn't quite sure, you know. So some people thought it was like a joke. He doesn't want yet. Yeah, that's why it fell. So the Rebbe's mother, the Rebbetzin Rivke, she said, "Mein Sohn hat kein Mensch in seinem Leben can joke," which is up. That's what she said. That the Rebbe Hashem never in his life said a joke. Everything he said, he meant. Even when it sounded a bit funny. So the Rebbe's got a secret where the Rebbe said, what does it mean? The Rebbe Hashem meant to tell us that the world wants to be midbareh. The world wants to be midbareh. Well, remember, he got a piece of cake. On that piece of cake, they had to cut the what do you call them? The meat, the wheat, and the water and the other stuff that's in that wants to be midbareh. There's a rotz and pnimi that wants to be midbareh. They want to be midbareh. Yes, they do, and that's what we see with the frogs. I gave a shiur in the yeshiva. I don't know if you remember anything. But I gave a shiur in the yeshiva that the frogs, they were big knobs, and they knew what they would do. They went on Mesiras Nefesh into the tanurim. A frog can't come to a tunnel. It just gets nisraf b'rega echad. They went into the tanur, because they went on Mesiras al Kiddush Hashem, and they even had a pasuk that they were saying, and that pasuk is indicative of the pnimis of the frog. You know, I would wish you to be a gesunter frog. That's what I wish you. Be a good frog. Because the frogs knew what they were doing. They wanted a pshitas. What size these mitzvah? A tanur. They have once we should be Mekadosh Shem Shemayim. Here we go. So the Zohar Kodesh says an amazing thing. I said today in the Koil. The Zohar Kodesh says an amazing thing. That all the other frogs that didn't go into the tanurim, they died. They all passed away, and they made smell, and there big heaps of them, and they didn't know what to do with them. But he said those ones that went into the tanurim, they didn't die. No. They came out of the tanurim and they flew away, and they went to better places than Mitzrayim. Yeah. And they stayed. In the Zohar, they stayed. We see that you can be over and beyond what appears to be the normal. And that's what the Zohar Kodesh is telling us, that Sfardim, Sfar Deo, Sfar is from Rosan Tzafra, even from the morning, Lichtikei, the coming of war. And Deo means knowledge. They had Lichtikei Deo. They had really Lichtikei Deo. That's why they call it Sfardim. Really close. The world wants to be midbareh. The world is looking to be midbareh. So it's not, if you go against and you work against Gilui Elokus in the world, then you're doing a bad favor to everybody, not just to the humans. You're doing a bad favor to the whole creation. Because the whole creation wants something better. The whole creation wants something better. And therefore, I remember once I was sitting in Perth, Australia, and I was sitting in I had to go to an airport, and I was waiting for a plane, which was half an hour late or something like that. And I sort of was all weary. I had a sefer, but I thought, I haven't got the quiet to really pay attention to the sefer. All of a sudden, there's a sort of big video screen comes up, and they show an amazing thing. They showed a guy that he'd found a way to converse with all animals. Doesn't matter who they are. He goes out into the deserts and jungles in Africa, and he catches these huge things that would just eat you up, like these what do you call it? Savage lizards. Or they're huge. They're just ready to eat it. And he stands with them on his shoulder, and he pats him on the head and he talks to him. And they're just such good buddies with him. And there's pictures of it. And he takes out he's got this little sort of, what I call mouth organ, and he plays a little tune to them, and they start to I was just mind-boggled when I saw it. I couldn't figure it. So I said, that's from heaven. I had to see that for some reason. Yeah, and that's what the Rebbe Rashab means, that the world really wants to be with Baruch. That's what it really means. And the Chetei Tzadaz and a few other things, they blew it. That's it. Doesn't matter. Guys, we're going to start seeing the right way. We're going to start realizing that things want to be good. The world wants to be good. The world wants a Geula. We want Moshiach now. I'm sure if you could understand that the Rizal could do it, if you could understand what the birds are saying one to the other, and even the palm trees, the way they move in the wind is giving messages one to the other. Azat gesagt Shlomo HaMelech. Was did the Gemara bring? They understood Sichas had the Kalim. It's put down in the Shara Kavonas that the Arizal knew the same thing. He could understand the message. So we give him one palm tree to the other. And if we were to understand all those things, I'm sure we would hear him saying, we want Moshiach now. Yeah. That's what they would be saying. Because that's the way it's all moving. It's all moving into a completely different dimension, a completely different world. That's what the Rebbe said. You've got to have another type of vision. It just means look differently and don't listen to this whole crazy world. Because even if you just walk on the street, you're being subjected to the world. Oilam goilam, it's called in Yiddish, the oilam goilam. You're being subjected to it. It's hitting you. Yeah, you've got to get free of that. And that's what the Rabbi did. The Rabbi lifted up the world and said you can be free of that. Look differently. And you'll see a completely different world. We should look differently. We should see differently. We should live differently. And we shouldn't listen to all the baloney. Because the majority of what hits us is baloney. Ain't shum sorry b'doy. And the real truth is tired. That's why Avraham Avinu taught you that you got to have Mesiras Nefesh. For the real truth, you got to be prepared for a question. L'chaim, guys, I don't know if this is making sense, but I'll put him. Kach nira l'ani es dati. I say, Vamir kum to'ez. Etosa di nakuda. We have to realize that that's what the Rebbe said, that the difference between the Golas and the Geula is just an instant, it's an instant. All it needs is we're just going to even make a decision to think and see differently, and boom. L'chaim.
I'm a Rabbi.
Rabbi Gafne, if, as you say, the light of Shabbos mevatels the food, as you say, wouldn't the light of somebody's demise also radiate a light that would open the eyes? In other words, isn't that the light that the Alter Rebbe...
Somebody demands?
Somebody's passing away.
Yeah.
Like the Alter Rebbe's talking, wouldn't it open your eyes, their light?
Just as we were driving here tonight, Moshe's Eidah. He's not one being an Eidah. Kosher Eidah. We spoke in the car, that's written in the Kishrei Arizal, an amazing thing. It's written that when the Arizal passed away, and they took you to cleanse the Tahara before burying him, they wanted to be matbil, that he should toil.
Yeah.
But they didn't want to have to lift him up and push him under the water, it's a little kavod. So the Rabbeinu Chaim Batal said to the Arizal, he said to him, I'll teach him, maybe you could do it.
For yourself.
Maybe you'll look after it for us. So the Arizal got up from the bed This is not a Chabad Sefer. This is a so-called ordinary Sefer. Yeah? The Rizal got up from the bed, stepped down into the water, bowed down, and toiled himself, and came back and got onto the bed. Yeah.
He had already passed?
It's written. And the same thing happened with the Mezritza Magi. The Mezritza Magi, the same thing happened, that the Talmidim didn't want to, push him under the water. They didn't think it was that. So they were sort of talking, what are they going to do? And the next thing is the Maggid got up, or he slid slightly off the bed, and he went down into the water.
With his eyes open.
Yeah.
Open
Yeah.
right.
And he was looking at what he was doing, and he slid himself under the water, and he came back and got onto the, the Mezritza was stated, what down, the Sipurim. אבל יש כמה וכמה סיפורים. The Alter Rebbe, kocht al het Teves. The Alter Rebbe, first, Amichai. The Alter Rebbe, when they were taking him from this Kvar across the Hodid, it was a huge journey, it was a big, and it was all snow, everything. And Napoleon was already retreating from Moscow. He was already retreating, and so the Cossacks came out of their villages and everything, and they want to cause trouble to Napoleon, which they did very capably, because they're very cruel and and they're very swift-moving, and they have these big sabers. They just cut a person in two with one thwack. They're going with a sledge through the snow, and the Alter Rebbe is in the back of the sledge. They're going through the snow. All of a sudden, they see a whole bunch of these Cossacks. Now, if they were to see there's a dead man, Rahman and Klan, in the sledge, they would immediately cut them all into two. They would just swish them and kill them all on the spot. So they didn't know what they're going to do. They're heading towards these guys, and they've seen them already, so what are they going to do?
Why would they?
Why?
Why? Because they see a dead man, so he must be up to no good. He must be up to no good. So it's written, it's put down in the Sefer from Isis. That's one place, the Migdalois, the Monshine. Now he brings it down. I heard it from Siddim, even in Australia. But they said that the Alter Rebbe actually got up from the back of the sledge and slid himself over, and he sat down alongside the guy who was driving the sledge. Yeah, actually sat down. But he didn't speak, or he didn't say anything, but he just, sat politely alongside this guy. So that when the Cossacks came over, they thought he was just some sort of old guy that was half asleep and he didn't want to talk with them, But they didn't suspect anything. They didn't. So they just examined everybody carefully. They didn't even bother with the Alter. They didn't say what's real. They thought, Alter, red schlafen, what's it matter? And they just sent him on. Amazing. And once again, we see that the tzaddikim of Misoso, gedolim meyasher b'chayeihem. Well, it's full of it. The literature is, the Gemara said Masechet Sotah that Yaakov Avinu, when they were bringing him to bury him, and Esav made trouble. You know the whole story. Hushim bent down, gave him a swish and killed him. It's written that Yaakov Avinu sat up on the bed and looked and smiled. As he stated in the Gemara Masechet Sotah. It's full of it everywhere. They said, once again, we're locked up in a certain way that we've been always trained, and everybody just says, well, that's the way it is. So that's the way it is. But if you look deeper and you look more, mitzad the emissary inyan of what a tzaddik Godel really is, then it's a different story. It's another reality. It doesn't matter how much the philosophers don't like it. They like to say there's only one reality because that's comfortable for them. They don't like the idea of another reality. But the truth is there's a much higher and better reality. Anyway, listen guys, Zot L'chaim. And L'chaim. As Hashem Shalom, the view of that is with a tzlacha gedola. If we're going to do something, as the old saying has, we have to get cracking. We've got to bring the Guru Shleim and take him out now.
Amen.
Open our eyes.
given a becher. Dort given Wein, Karush.
Ja, von dem alten Rabbi.
Die Alten haben nicht von der Abdolle, was sie gewähnt, nicht von der Abdolle, was sie gewähnt, drunk.
Das ist möglich.
Wahrscheinlich ist es Wein und Tee.
How about a free translation, Gabriel?
Aber es ist möglich.
Aber so ist es nicht wegen Abdolle auf Coffee zu taste, gewähnt Abdolle Wein.
Wahrscheinlich, was ist in der Schäde?
Was ist da mit der Becher? Ein silberner Becher.
Der Becher ist laut ab hier.
Was ist das für Kiddisch?
Has a little symbol flashing.
The
Wenn ich will, schon rein. Das ist gewöhnt zu Siguren. Ich kann sagen.